So long as it doesn't make my ears bleed.
No. Oh, all right. We are officially live. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar today. We'll be going over our reminder protocols. We've got Janine here, who is, she is probably the best person to take us through. She is our head of customer success. Obviously, everyone knows the key benefit of a reminder system is for client compliance. We want to know that our clients know when it's time to come back in for services and for products. And that increases their likelihood that they're going to follow through with their appointments and treatments, leading to better health outcomes, which is obviously what we want. So thank you, Janine, for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm super excited to show lots of people how we can create more automation for our clinical team to be more compliant, but also lower the workload on every single clinical record for our technicians and our doctors to double check. So this is one of my main goals today, to go through what was the old setup of our Digitail reminders and how can we now enhance them with the new protocols we can now create custom for each individual clinic. Heather, should I share my screen and should we get started?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump right in.
Okay. I prepared actually a full new environment for everybody today so that we have kind of like a squeaky clean Digitail where we can kind of talk through a lot of things and hopefully also at the end of this answer some questions. The first thing what I want to show is with the new reminder rollout of Digitail, also our health card view has changed. So I'm just going to quickly go over what does the health card actually show in the pure intent for our clinical team. And also then we're going to go what is the current reminder setup and what are my recommendations to make those reminders way smarter and in a way automated for your clinical team. So the first thing what I wanted to do is I prepared Mario. And we're going to just quickly jump into that health card to see pretty much the overview of the preventatives. With that stated, now that we can set out customizations, you can have as many preventatives here available as possible. And we're just going to load this quickly. And again, I want to highlight that if you have somebody coming in from a different clinic and they have historical records, you can always add them in. We have this little area here. You pick the protocols, and currently we have just our normal protocols loaded, who are our historical ones. You can also see if the protocols were added manually or through a data migration, because they wouldn't have a little icon like this one here. I will make this a little bit bigger so people can actually better see what I'm talking about. So those little icons refer that this particular preventative was given through a medical record, while those are all missing. So that would mean that we are added them manually on through this action button, or that they came through from a data migration. So historical data who never been actually created in Digitail, but we synced through because you guys had a previous system you have utilized. And obviously we didn't want to miss out on those reminders, because preventative reminders for our clinics are truly reoccurring revenue and really, really important. So that is the first thing what I wanted to show. Another thing what I would like to highlight is if for whatever reason somebody entered something wrong on the manual ones, you can click on our little action button to the right here, and you could update directly here the original administration date or when the due date is, because we all sometimes make mistakes when we're entering a lot of record data. So don't worry about it. You can pretty much fix this and align it. Again, one of the newest options here is as well, now that we have the new cool protocols, if they're all aligned on the same date, then we are sending a mass reminder out for them. So that means if they're all coming in for the annual and we're having, the reminders all set for, let's just say here, 7/20, then all of our reminders would send as a bulk and not separate messages. But as you can see here in my health card, all of the reminders are on different dates. So each of those reminders would be sent out separately so that the customer knows the cadence we decided. again, if the customer doesn't want a lot of communication from the clinic because they voiced that opinion, we can just set those dates straight by the action button I just showed and align them all, because it probably wouldn't matter to wait 4 extra days for the general dental reminder to go out at the same time as the rabies reminder. So we can do that manual and overwrite this even the year before they came on 2 separate days, and can make this nice and easy for our pet owners. But let's just dive in. How are currently our reminders working the old way, and how would I recommend setting them up to make it easier on your clinical staff with more automation? I think the most reminders we're using is rabies, because it's also a legality for most states or countries. So I wanted to go through this. For that, I kind of prepared somebody who doesn't really has anything fancy yet set up. And we're just going to go quickly to my flow board, and we're going to work with Run. And I'm just going to open that record because he's today here for a rabies vaccine. And what most people currently have set up without fanciness is when we're converted the old reminders into the new protocols, it should look something like that. When we're going to go into the plan section, we'll probably under the services and products, pull up our rabies. And I have lots of in here because guess what? I used a demo site for this, and I thought I actually made it a little bit smarter to find them faster for us. There we go. And in this case, we might want to use our normal rabies, what is embedded in the reminders. And you can now see here that I manually need to pick, is this a 1-year reminder or 3-year reminders? In some cases, obviously here it states it's a 1 year, but it needs to have a drop down. So when I click on here, this is kind of manual work where I can default from a 1 year to a 3 year. And that's a lot of work when I do probably 50 vaccines a day for my clinical staff. Ideally, I would like this to automatically know what I want to use. And so let's dive in how we can set this up and how can we fix this. So for this, we need particular permissions to go actually to the heart of the software, our administration screen. This normally defaults to this bubble here. And if I have the right permission, I normally see that administration button, what then moves me into the overview of the software. To find our current protocols, we need to scroll all the way down on this screen, and we can see here that we have our new reminder protocols available. Those reminder protocols normally come with the preset groups we had always available. So that means before we could only on the product level choose those particular names to embed them on the health card. What we're going to concentrate on is how do we have normally that rabies set up. And I want to just quickly show and open this up because even our 1 year and 3 year live in the same category. That's why we had this drop down of this reoccurring period, what we now can pick in the record, and we had it on a product level. But we all know in the veterinary industry that the product is always the same, no matter if the dog or cat gets vaccinated for 1 year versus a 3 year. And so with that, what we can do in this new option is that we can pretty much set fancier protocols on so long we have a unique trigger. And what I mean by the unique trigger is that we can now move them to a service level where we could create a service bundle and embed our inventory product, but have 2 different service bundles, one for the 1 year and one for the 3 year. What makes it unique? Each bundle would have that inventory item, what is the same vial, included. So we are keeping our inventory in check while we make the software smarter. And now you say, well, Janine, how do I do this? I'm going to walk you through it. What I don't want is that the original protocols we have been using maybe for over the years, that we're changing them up, because that could break actually historical data in the software. So ideally, what I always recommend to all of my customers who already did the switch to more automation in those reminders is that when we have an old category we have used for a long time, don't change the name, don't do anything, turn it off, because if we turn it off, it will give you alert here which says, I will turn off all reminders from the historical data. And that's a lot of money for you guys. Like reminders equal reoccurring revenue. And if we would just turn this off and don't remind the customers from the last couple of years that they're due on rabies, that's obviously not ideal. So what I recommend instead of turning it off is I make the old rule dormant. And people say, why would you make it dormant? Because I want the historical reminders to still trigger, but want to make my new rules a lot smarter. So I'm going to walk you through this process, and I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples of protocols I think every clinic would love to use. They could be really simple and they could be very complex. Let's just start with the rabies. So what I typically do if I have a historical protocol, what came over A, through your data migration, or B, you use Digitail for a really long time and we didn't have those smarts before, what I do is I remove the trigger. That means I leave this whole section blank, because from today on, if I would make that change, this old protocol cannot be triggered anymore. Additionally, I want to know what is a dormant protocol. So I use my little star, because if we're still triggering the reminders for all of our last year's customers, or even from 3 years ago, I don't want to have something in the name which says do not use or not accurate anymore. Some people write things in here to make yourself visual that this is not a reminder protocol what we're actively using anymore. So I just put this little star because it doesn't look funny. It looks nice even in the reminder messaging, because the template name is what pretty much is the name what will default on the reminder template to the customer, and it's customer facing. With that stated, we can leave it as is currently because we have no triggers. That means nothing out of our records can currently trigger this old protocol. And now I'm going to set up 2 automated protocols for you guys. Before I do this, I want to confirm my change, right? So it means currently all of the historical reminders still going to get sent, but no new ones get created under this old protocol, what I just made dormant. With that stated, I'm going to now go and add a brand new protocol and make this a little bit smarter. And here we go again. The protocol name is what the customer will see and triggers that reminder. So in this case, I might want to be more specific this time around and want to write maybe rabies 1 year. The overwriting rule means if we had historical reminders would be the rabies what I just started, because this is currently living on the health card. And when we're using the new triggers and the new protocols, we want to overwrite the old one. First of all, it makes it nice and clean for our pet parents in their pet parent app. As well, it also shows on your health card that we're overridden it with a smarter role, and you still keep the historical data that you lost or used last month or last year, this old protocol, what we now don't use anymore. Additionally to this, we are now want to put in what is the reoccurring period. And in this case, because we're using unique triggers, our service bundles, who include the product from inventory, we just need 1 trigger and 1 reminder. And in this case, it would be the 1 year. Again, you can utilize 365 days, or you can just make it easier and put that 1 year here. For the services, you need to know in which category you created those bundles. And typically, because we name them all, I created all of mine on the vaccines. So it's easier for me to find. With that stated here, we always need to put a trigger in there, because if I leave it to all, it will trigger all of the services you ever use for this particular protocol. So we need to make it unique. What I mean by this is you can see that I have lots of bundles in here, and anytime we would have used that bundle, it could have triggered this if I'm not very specific in the rule. So my rule here particularly is I want to use my rabies 1 year. And I already created some bundles for us so that we can make this very easy. So we can see, oh, maybe I did it. So I'm just searching for my whole protocol. And here we have our rabies 1 year and our rabies 3 year service bundle. Keep in mind, both of them might have the same product from inventory to be taken out to keep your inventory accurate. They could have different prices. because if I only see you every 3 years, you might want to make it more expensive. But again, in this case, because it's our 1 year reminder, I obviously want to use our unique service bundle for the 1 year rabies. And that's how I'm going to set this up. The next step is now to create uniqueness. I also will create a new protocol. And you're like, Janine, that's a lot of work. But keep in mind, the setup is only one time a lot of work. And then your clinical team will reap the benefits of this every single record you're giving vaccines. So here for the next one, I'm going to do that rabies 3 year, because we now want to make the system smarter and give the system pretty much full overview of how we want to operate. Again, when we're using this new protocol, it could potentially overwrite that original rabies, but definitely we want the rabies to also overwrite that rabies 1 year protocol, right? Because every time they're coming back on time and we're now giving a 3 year rabies, the 1 year rabies due date is not due anymore because they done their job, they came in. Again, here I'm going to now put in my recurring period. And in this case, it would be a 3 year reminder every time I use this particular service. And here we have our unique trigger for that 3 year rabies. I'm going to just quickly confirm this. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to just show you how it works in a record, because I think sometimes we're talking a lot about setup, but nobody really understands that workflow. So let's go back to my little demo pad who already had a rabies vaccine. And now let's see how the overriding rules work, as well as we can utilize everything what we now have set up to make the system smarter. So we're going to go back to Mario, and we're going to just create a brand new SOAP. So a record for today. And then we're going to go through this workflow, and I'm going to show you how it reflects for your team so that they don't need to think about, is it a 1 year or a 3 year? And also how it will look on the health card with utilizing those overriding rules, because that's also a new feature. With that stated, we're here. We're going to do vaccines. Obviously, I'm not walking you through a whole vaccine check-in, but we're going to go into the plan section. And here we're going to go and look for our rabies. And in this case, we're going to look for that 3 year rabies because Mario is old enough. And you can now see down here that the rabies automatically comes now with the due date, and there's no necessary option. It is now smart enough from today on. It should be due in 3 years because we made it smart due to how we set up that reminder protocol, right? Additionally, we could make a change to it. If they say, oh, on this date, I will be on vacation, you could go in and say, oh, well, we can set it up to the 26th and change just that due date up manually. But again, now the software is smart enough. If we're using the unique trigger, what I embedded is the 3 year, that it automatically knows to remind now for the 3 year, as well as when we're going now to the health card. We should have two protocols, right? The old rabies from like last year and the new rabies we just put on from today. So let's just look over that and see how that now worked. So here we have now that rabies 3 year. It's now a very unique information for the customer. So the next time when their due date is due, they're getting a reminder and says, Mario is due for rabies 3 year. Please call the clinic to schedule an appointment. Very, very simple, very detailed. When we're looking now into our old rabies, you can see that there is no due date. So this old rabies will not trigger any more reminders to the customer. But historically, you still know that it was originally on an older protocol. So you can still look that up, but you can see here that there is a new icon you never seen probably before. And it pretty much tells you that this dormant role was overridden by that new role. What is the rabies we saw above? So it keeps everything nice and clean. And the customer in the pet parent app now sees only this new reminder. And this one is not visible on the pet parent app because we obviously don't want to confuse them. But again, we can make our system so much smarter that we don't have to pick anymore. Was this a 3 week reminder for a booster or 1 year or a 2 year? because we now can set automations through multiple protocols within the administration screen and then overwrite old rules we don't want to use anymore, or they are not necessary for the customer to be reminded on. With that stated, why don't we just set up a little bit of a smaller rule and show you guys one more time how to do it step by step, and then we're going to go a little bit into more complexity, because I know not everything is super easy and a lot of people have complex reminders they would like to set up. And keep in mind, now that we can do this on a service level, you can also set up reminders for annual exams and can put all of the exams who pretty much fulfill that rule to be triggered. Because let's just say, when I'm a healthy adult dog, I might want to be seen once a year. But as soon as I'm geriatric, I might want to have this dog to be visiting us every 6 months to make sure that we're not overseeing any health issue for a more geriatric patient. Again, all of this is customizable now for you guys, because you now can create wonderful new rules custom. So I'm going to go back into the setup, and for everybody, I'm just going to go through the workflow one more time. We're going to go to our own user, and if we have the right permission to do the setup, we're seeing the administration. In the administration, we then go all the way down on the left-hand side till we find our reminder protocols. And then again, if I wanted to just create a new protocol because I never had it before, it's very easy. You just hit that add reminder protocol button. In this case, I might want to set something up what is newer available, and that might be a Solensia injection, right? Like, this is a pretty new product on the market, and typically my customer needs to go back once a month, but I don't want to call them, and if they're already want this extra treatment, they would probably prefer to have a reminder for this. So we're just going to do here Solensia injection. So again, when you name your new protocol, the template name is the one the customer sees. So it's very important to sound professional and to be, in a way, informative, because most of our pet owners are not super medical like we are. So let's just make sure that we maybe not use short terms like DH2PP. I don't think a lot of pet parents actually know what that stands for, but it is to you. You can make those decisions because now you can word those protocols to your own liking. Again, in this case, because it's a brand new product, what I just took in and now use in my clinic, I don't have an overriding rule because there was no previous rule existing. And also because this is a consistent 1 month reminder every time I give that injection, I don't really need any other rules in place either. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to set the period up again. Here is our period, and this is now, we want this repeated every time within a month after we're giving this injection. So the trigger on this case is actually a product I'm using, right? I don't need a service for this necessarily, because on the product we could have an injection fee. So with that, I believe I need to see where I put this in. So if you never know what category you put them in, here's a trick. You can go a little bit up, and with your right hand mouse click, you can just open a secondary screen to look up the products to see in which category you have put that in, because I don't think you guys remember all of the categories you put your products in from maybe a year or 2 years ago when you set up your software. So in this case, I might want to just search for this product. Hope I'm spelling this correctly. Nope, did not. There's the German coming.
I like the little hack. Just make it easier by being able to do this.
There it is. And it is in the category anti-inflammatory. So it's easy to find once I know the category. But the problem is, if I don't know the category, it's sometimes like, oh, I don't want to search through all categories. So this is a little trick to quickly figure out which categories is this actually living in. So here we want to look at the correct category. And you might need to scroll down a little bit because you can see we have a lot of categories here. And there it is. And then we can now, again, always be particular, because you can see in this category, I have hundreds of products, and obviously not all of those products should trigger this reminder automation. So with that, be very particular, but you could have multiples in there. So what I mean by that is, if we would set this up for HeartGuard or anything like that, you might want to use multiple HeartGuard triggers, because obviously you have different sizes on a product, and they could always trigger that protocol. I hope that makes sense. We can also go over that later on again and make sure that we go through any of your guys' questions. So here's my product. So every time I use this product in a medical record and check this record out, it then automatically creates a monthly reminder for the pet owner. And all what we need to do is confirm it. I did promise to kind of go into a little bit more complex setup. And I think something where people say, I want this smarter, is how do I set up complexity around maybe a distemper combination? Because distempers normally is the same vial, but the same vial, depending on our vaccine status of the pet, could be a booster, which is only good for 21 days. Could be a 1 year, but it also could be a 3 year. So again, because we want to make the system smarter, that means I don't want my technician with every vaccine to pick what's the next due date, because we humans sometimes makes mistake. And the truth is, our veterinary clinical field is very, very busy, and we see a lot of things. And let's just say when a puppy comes in and we're doing a rabies, a Bordetella, distemper, and lepto, I don't want my technician to change manually 4 reminders up. That's a lot of work. And we might do this 30 times a day. All of that work can be dedicated to other things, education, bring in, more revenue for us, because we can educate our customers instead of working hard on our software to have the correct reminders. So let's deep dive into that. And I'm going to just set this up. And again, typically, customers who don't start brand new already have a rule. So let's go through this one more time. When we're finding the old rule, and the old rule kind of had like lots of things in it. So let's just go and look where the old rule is, because those are all of the reminders you probably already have as a protocol, because they came from your historical data in Digitail. So here is that rule. Again, I discourage you guys from just turning that rule off, because that would pretty much encounter that we're turning all historical reminders off would bring you a lot of money in reoccurring revenue when the customer gets that reminder and books that appointment. So instead, what we want to do is we're going to go into the rule. Again, I use my little trick. I put like a little star in front of it. And typically the rule would have looked probably something like this: 3 year. So you had it all in one, and then you had to pick kind of like the 21 day, what was the booster, and then you had to always pick, did I do a booster, was it 1 year or 3 year, because you could always put it just on a product level. So remove your trigger, make this rule dormant, and I actually want that star in front, because I want everything to look the same, so our customers get good communications. They all look the same. Once I'd done this and removed my original trigger, what would have been probably in your case the distemper inventory product, then we can move on and create those cool new rules. So I'm going to just confirm this. I have my little star. Don't worry, there are no overriding rules we need to put in here, because the ideal scenario is we're overriding this very tedious rule, and we want to now create 3 rules. They make our system a lot smarter to reduce pretty much workload on our clinical team and potentially human error, right? So if we're always using the right service bundles, then that shouldn't be a problem. So deep dive into this. First of all, I hope everybody knows how service bundles work, but if you don't, I want to quickly make a review, because I think it gets a little technical, and I just want to make sure that when I use words, that everybody in this webinar knows what I'm talking about. So let's just quickly ignore this screen we're on. I'm going to leave it open, but I'm going to quickly jump into our services. And I'm going to right click and open just a new page for you guys, because I might want to go back and forth between those pages to make sure that I have it in the right category and that everything is right set up. So with that stated, I'm just quickly going to go into my service overviews. And typically what I recommend to have unique triggers for vaccines, because typically, you know, in the old terms, we did like reminder products where we had different due dates on it, and you had to really manage a lot of inventory that way, because even if it was fake inventory, we don't even need that anymore. What we need to do is just create 3 services, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. And with those 3 services, I just want to make sure that you guys find the how I recommend the setup. So I'm just going to go into the DH2PP and search what kind of services do I have. And you can see here, I already did a little bit of pre-work for this webinar, but I pretty much created a booster service. And keep in mind, you can use different words. I just wanted to make it very clear for the customer when they see it on the invoice what that service entails. Then I have an annual service, what is my 1 year? And then I have my 3 year. Keep in mind, they can cost all the same price, or you can make them a little bit different in cost. What I do, because if I don't see you more than every 3 years, I want to make a little bit more money out of you. But that's more of a business strategy, right? So obviously, you guys do what is best for your practice and what your customers are used to. But how I would like to set this up is I'm embedding in my little services the same goods I want to take out of inventory. So you can see that I have pretty much, I'm taking out 1 vial of distemper combo and 1 vial of leptospirosis every time out of the fridge when I use the service. So first of all, that takes care of my inventory management because the services are smart enough. Also, those prices do not influence the cost of the service. What is nice, this is pretty much just for you to see what's embedded and pretty much to make the service smarter and take automatically things out of inventory. So is there a question?
Yep, we've got one question. Lynn has asked, they said, you may have already covered this and I missed it. Busy environment this morning. How do all of these show up on the reminder report once the old protocols are inactive?
That's a great question. If it's okay for Lynn, I'm going to just leave this to the end while we're going through the setup so that people know step by step how to do the setup. And then can go a little bit more in reporting and the functionality here, because there's actually 2 different reports available for reminders. And we're going to go over that at the end. So we'll hold off on this for a second. But I hope everybody understands, because the 3 year uses the same inventory items than typically that booster would use, right? The problem here is on the 3 year that leptospirosis will never become a 3 year, because lepto is normally only good for 1 year. So there will be a little bit of a uniqueness. I'm going to show you how I set this up and how I utilize that service as a unique trigger in 2 different protocols. So now that you guys know how I'm pretty much have my services set up, and if you want to add more things to your bundles, nobody's holding you back. So in this case, if you would like to add something else to it, you add that little pencil item here, and we could add, if you wanted to, I don't recommend tracking white goods, but you could add probably a syringe to it. Let's see if I have a syringe somewhere.
That was going to be my question, if you recommend tracking like individual items like that.
Yeah, so we could track one, but again, what happens if the syringe falls on the floor or the needle?
We all know, yeah.
Right? So I don't typically recommend this, but I wanted to show you, you can say here, every time I use this service, I want to take 1 vial out of each of those cartons out of my fridge, plus I'm going to use 1 syringe. And in this case, you probably will use a 1 cc syringe. But again, right, like just bear with me. And then when we're hitting the save button from now on, every time we use pretty much that service bundle, it would take out a lepto, a syringe, and as well as a distemper combo out of my inventory, because that's what I typically use when I provide this particular service. Again, your service costs don't derive from the costs from the products who are embedded. So it's really nice for you to have a custom fee on that, because when we're giving vaccines, it's not just that you poke the animal, right? It's also the educational step. In a lot of times, when we do a rabies, there's also a certificate. So it's extra work for you guys. So the customer should pay for your smarts. So make those services appropriate pricing, and that's how you can pretty much customize that. But let's go into the setup, because I think that's where a lot of people struggle. How would you set this up? And so ideally, what I recommend when we're going back to our reminder protocols, you say, Janine, you're crazy. But I would set up actually 6 rules. And this seems like a lot of work, but keep in mind, those 6 rules will be fully automated. And so, yes, it's a lot of work to set up those 6 rules once, but then from there on, it's automated, and your team doesn't need to do any more manual work with inside the record. So what I mean by this is, let's just dive in, and I'm going to set up a couple of rules with you guys, and I'm going to go through it a little bit quickly, because obviously I don't want you to just monitor me doing things over and over again, but I would like you to understand how I'm going to set this up. So the first one I'm going to set up is our like distemper combo. And again, you can make your own name, but make it sure that it is customer friendly, because what I think sometimes is really hard is when a customer gets a reminder and they don't even know what it is about. So in this case, I might want to do distemper combination booster. Again, this is just a recommendation. You can still do the DA2PP and DHPPP if you like this. My first step is, no matter what I'm doing, because I never had this before, but I had an old historical one, I want to include that historical rule here to override, right? Because we don't know when we use this, did they ever, what was their previous protocol? Then, because it's a booster, that's a 21-day. It doesn't matter if it's the first or the second puppy booster. You can have a different service for this, and then you can put both of those services in here. Again, for me, I'm going to go a little bit easier because I'm big into education, and typically customers, when I talk to them, this is your first puppy booster, I need you to come back. And then they come back, and this is your second puppy booster, and then I need you to come back. Keep in mind, those roles are important and the triggers are important. So in this case, I set this all up under vaccines. I know this because it's a vaccine and it's the smart category to use. And then we can do here pretty much our triggers. And for this one, I believe I did some star triggers so that we can find them, because I have so many in the system. So here's the service I just showed you, right? So this is my booster. This is for my distemper. I'm just going to confirm this. This was a really easy one to set up. I'm going to now go in, and yes, you're going to tell me, Janine, you're crazy, but I want to set up another category for Lepto. Why do I want to set this up? Because people sometimes change their mind. They not always want maybe a distemper Lepto. They might next year come back and just want a distemper, and then you don't need it then they don't need a reminder for the Lepto category, because they told you they don't want that Lepto. And you probably will have a service what has just a distemper without a Lepto, because it's probably a different price for you guys. So again, here I'm going to create now a Lepto rule. And in this case, I'm going to call this leptospirosis booster. Again, I want to educate my customer that you need to come back shortly after. Again, we probably had actually an old Lepto one where I didn't put the star on. So you can see there's no star yet, but we want to overwrite the old rule. Same principle as the distemper is applicable here. This booster, again, is 21 days. Because I have a separate Lepto vaccine, I might put 2 triggers in here, because when they're only coming in for Lepto, because they're going maybe on a camping trip, we might want to put that 3-week Lepto in here. But again, also the combination, what we used before in the distemper, also fulfills this rule. And I hope I don't break anybody's brain right now, but keep in mind, in this service, there was a Lepto included, and this Lepto booster fulfilled the rule, and they need to come back in 21 days. And now I'm going to confirm this. Again, now we're going to do the same thing with the yearly ones. Very, very similar. So we're going to go again with the, I believe I already have it. And instead of the distemper combination booster, we're going to do annual. People like annual or 1 year. Keep in mind, keep it persistent. So if you call it a 1 year here, then you should call the rabies a 1 year. If you call it an annual, call your rabies an annual. It makes it just so much nicer on the pet parent app to have like unique setups, and it looks very, very professional for you guys. So just a little bit of background thought process why I like it that way. Again, with that, we now need multiple overriding rules, right? We want to override the original one, what is the one nobody knows really what it means. And then we also want to overwrite the booster, because when they're old enough and we are now giving them the 1 year service, the next time they need to come in is in a 1 year, and the booster is obsolete. They don't need to come back for another booster. So we're overriding that 21-day reminder, because we're now using a unique option for our vaccine here. And again, this is the unique trigger. What is that 1 year service, what I would use in this case? And again, it could have a different price if you wanted to. But I just wanted to make sure that I kind of highlight everything here. So this would be the 1 year, what I have in here. And I need to set this all up correctly. Confirm. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the Lepto. So as I told you, we need 6 rules. And for those 6 rules, I want to just make sure that I set everything up perfectly for you guys. And again, I'm sticking with the same thing. I'm going to do it a 1 year because I like how it looks. Here we want to override obviously the booster and the original Lepto. So similar things, we want to override those other protocols who are not important anymore, because now we have a unique trigger and we now want to remind on a different due date. So in this case, it would be also a 1 year and not a 1 day. We're going to go back into our vaccines. Here we want now 2 triggers, because we have that 1 year Lepto, magic. And then we also want to find that 1 year distemper, what has that leptospirosis included, because you can use that trigger in 2 different routes to have 2 different results triggered. I hope everybody still can follow me. I know it sometimes hurts our head a little bit. And confirm. So from now on, we're always triggering this. And now you're like, okay, now we have the 3 year, Janine, but the 3 year Lepto is not a 3 year Lepto. Don't you worry. We're going to still make it happen. We're going to add another distemper. What is our 3 year distemper, right? We have our unique trigger. We're going to do overriding rules here again. I wish this would be a little bit more interactive, but I'm pretty sure everybody kind of knows right now what we're typically doing. So we're going to overwrite our old rule, what was not as flexible, and we had to pick everything manual. Then we want to also override the distemper combination, because maybe they went for their 1 year somewhere else because they were military family and had to travel for a couple of years. And we also want to override our normal 1 year, because that's the typical flow, right? They're coming back in a particular time frame. They don't need to come back for yearly vaccines on this anymore. So we just want to do here the overriding for that 1 year. Again, our particular reoccurring period here would be a 3 year. And then we need to find the correct service. And to make this a little, here's our 3 year. And we're going to confirm this. Now you're like, Janine, but what do I do with that Lepto? Guess what? We're going to shove that Lepto into the 1 year Lepto with the same trigger, because when they're coming back, that Lepto still needs to remind for 1 year. Here, that's kind of like where it becomes tricky, and you can use that. So here we had our one, what is the 1 year, what fulfills this 1 year due date. But now we also want to put in here as a trigger that 3 year, because, oops, I got clicker happy. Because that 3 year is only for the distemper, what we set up in the other rule. That 1 year is the one what will fulfill that Lepto. So even they're not needing to come back for the distemper reminder in 3 years, I still need you to come back for that Lepto in 1 year, right? Again, if I would have a different trigger where we're just vaccinating against distemper, then we wouldn't need to embed it here because the distemper implies that we're only giving the distemper and they never had lepto before. I hope that makes sense to a lot of people. So I'm going to just also put this into action because me talking about it doesn't make a lot of sense till I show you how it works. So let's go back to wonderful Milo. What is my baby? All right. I closed already his record. So I'm going to just search Milo in my patient search. Yes, it's a demo. There's not that many patients in there, but everybody here in this meeting knows how our patient search works. With that, I'm just going to find our little patient, and I'm just going to go and open this up. Again, keep in mind, we're going to use the same soap we already had, and now we're going to add our distemper combination lepto service to it, and then I'm going to show you how it triggers it. Hopefully you guys like it because it will remove all of the manual work from you guys' records. With that stated, I'm going to just slow it down and go down here where our draft record is from where we put that rabies vaccine on, and we're going to now add another service to this record. Again, it can also, you can embed those services into a canned treatment plan and then sync everything down, because obviously this is a lot of manual work, but we're concentrating more on how are those automations work in the background. So here again, I'm going to go in the plan section, and in the plan section, I'm now going to look under services because we're moving it from products who are not unique to services who we can make unique. And the more unique they are, the more unique automation reminder roles we can attach to them. So in this case, I'm going to just look at my stars so that we can find a lot of quickies. So here we have pretty much our stars, and I'm going to make sure that I maybe do the distemper and see if that comes up or if I had a space. There they are. And I want to use that 3-year because I want to show you how it works, because that 3-year is the unique one, right? So we have now our first rabies, then we had our distemper, and all of them are down here. But you can now see that all of them know exactly when I want them to come back. So as I set it up in the rule, my distemper combination is due in 3 years from today on. But my lepto, because I don't vaccinate lepto 3-year increments, I only do it in 1-year increments, is due actually in 1 year. I don't need to do anything. Like, my technicians can trust fully the system, depending that I put in the correct service, that we now have the automation and know exactly when somebody needs to be reminded on. Again, let's dive also into the health card, because I want you to see all of those things, right, on the health card. So I'm going to just quickly sneak onto the health card this way and open this up to kind of show you what also happened on the health card side. So on the health card, we should now have at least 3 fulfilled vaccines, and we can see them here. So here's our first rabies. And then you saw that I manually changed that date up in the record before. I can now change it back to the 29th. And so that means that all of those reminders, because they're all on the same date for the 27th, so the rabies and the distemper will be included in one email or one SMS to the customer. And it pretty much states for the customer, you know, Mario is due for his 3-year rabies as well as his distemper combination 3-year. Please call the clinic to schedule an appointment. This one will go out actually 2 years prior, because this distemper, this lepto is only due for 1 year. And it does show you here which product used. Again, this is for internal use. The customer, so the pet owner, will not see that on their health card. This is more for you, that you saw him and you provided pretty much use that item to trigger this. It's more for historical data for you guys. But you can see that the smarts will show very clearly here how the reminders should be triggered, and it hopefully makes your clinical staff utilize less time of their own to fix each individual record and click which reminder due date is actually accurate for the pet's age. So we can just move it to a service and make it all a lot smarter.
We do have, I think it's more of a comment than a question, but
Evo is correct.
Yes. So it says VAT in Portugal is different for products versus services. Ridiculous, I know. 6% products, 23% services. We would ideally inflate the proportion of the product in the final price. So we would charge 90% for the vaccine vial and 10% for the service.
Correct. I think you understood it. It's obviously a particular rule there, but yes, it is correct because again, the vial itself will not be charged to the customer. It pretty much will be taken out in the background out of your inventory, and everything moves to a service. And you're right that you would need to pretty much think of the tax consequences on this. Again, you still can utilize products if you don't want to move in that direction, but then the manual step stays as it is currently, right? Because the product, you could create 3 different products, but then how do you manage your inventory to have unique product triggers? But that's where my heart breaks, because then you don't have a good inventory trackability. And so I hate creating unnecessary products, because that could then offset your inventory and also how much you hold on hand, because it's inaccurate. So but yeah, you're correct, Ivo. You would have to make up for it in that service cost to think of that. I actually went through all of my examples. Again, I hope you can apply this to other things, right? We could now have a cool example for a heartworm or NexGard, and then you have multiple triggers, the different sizes of the products, and you could have multiple action items, because our software is not smart enough if you gave them 1 tablet of HeartGard or 6 tablets or 12 tablets. So that is a thing where we are not yet there with Digitail. So your technician would have to add, oh, I dispensed 6 HeartGards. That means my trigger is a 6 months reminder, right? You only know this. The product itself doesn't know what you gave them on a quantity, what then decides pretty much the reminder cadence. So we could set it up that we would have the heartworm, the HeartGard or the NexGard with multiple reminder options, how we had it before. But on the vaccines, because we do it so frequently, I would strongly recommend thinking of going from a product setup to a service setup to just make your technicians and your own workflows just more functional, more accurate, and utilize the automations we have. The same thing for if you have any integration, right? Antec, IDEX, you can set now reminders up for annual blood work and include all of those products you have linked to an integration. And again, when I say annual blood work, it could be multiple blood works from IDEX or Antec who fulfill that rule. So put as many service triggers in there who would fulfill the same rule. But we had that other question.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Let me reread it so that we can make sure we're getting it covered. So Lynn asked, you may have already covered this, but they've been busy. How do all of these show up on the reminder report once the old protocols are inactive?
Correct. So the reports are actually getting they get a facelift. I think that's a good word to use. And we're going to make those reports a lot smarter for you guys, because we also know currently that the overdue report is currently available in Power BI, but not so much in the UI. So give our team a little bit more time to make it fancy. But what we're referring to, if just for people who might never even seen this report, when we're going to the reporting option on our top bar, we do have some reports available where we have the clinical reports, but is that reminder report we're currently talking about. Because when we're using the overriding rules, the due date is getting removed. That means that also should then remove it from this report. Because if we have no due date, our setup, how we should trigger that reminder, right? Because you can, in the admin setup, I want to trigger a reminder a week before the due date, 3 months before the due date, 3 hours, well, not hours, but like we can set up unique rules for each clinic, because each clinic, books out in different timeframes. Some clinic might book out 3 weeks ahead. So giving them a 1-week reminder might not be ideal before the due date, because they will automatically be overdue because we are having such a busy schedule. So for them, we might want to set up a 1 month ahead towards the due date reminder, and then maybe another one a week before, right? So again, this is a unique setup, but because the overriding rules I just educated you guys on, we're removing those due dates. So on those due dates, if there is no due date, there is no trigger of when to send that reminder out. So those are pretty much not included anymore because we so-called overwritten them with a smarter rule, what has a new due date on them. I hope that makes sense. Again, this reminder report, you can see there's also a couple of other things in the planning and coming. They are kind of scheduled in to be reworked over the next couple of months. And we should have some cool new opportunities here before the end of the year to even have more filters, more fine tuning. And also we're going to include an overdue filter because we don't want to forget about the ones who didn't action all of the reminders we send and still didn't schedule an appointment, right? Because the reminder is only fulfilled not by scheduling the appointment. The reminder is fulfilled when they're coming in for their appointment, and a service what fulfills that rule or a new rule what overrides the old rule is fulfilled. So let's just say somebody scheduled a vaccine appointment, but then the puppy came in with a fever and terrible vomiting and diarrhea. You wouldn't vaccinate that animal. And so that means we didn't fulfill actually what they came in for because we had to treat for something else. So those reminders will then look on the app as well on your health card as overdue and show up in red. So that the next time they're calling or even after this visit, we can immediately schedule a new vaccine visitation, because obviously not everybody brings always a healthy animal in. When we're once at the vet clinic, we want to get as much as possible done, right? And sometimes we have little surprises. But I'm talking a lot, so I hope that made a lot of sense. Is there another question, Heather, or anything from your side?
No questions that I'm seeing in the chat. I just wanted to call attention to the little kind of like tidbits of gold that I noticed. Because obviously I'm familiar with this. I've watched you do this before, but using the asterisk, the little star, as a way to indicate that this is a dormant reminder protocol, I think is genius, because we all know communication is always hard in a vet clinic. So having something just a set standard, like if you see the asterisk and I think is really, really key. The right click and open the window would be amazing for me, because I'm always wanting to double check what I'm doing before I finalize anything or before I save. So that was amazing as well. And I'm really excited for the additional reports that are coming. I know that our product team and development team are always hard at work trying to find ways to improve the software and to solve problems and to optimize everyone's workflow. So I know that sometimes people need a little bit of an extra push. Sometimes we do need to dedicate some time to make some phone calls and really chase those people that haven't come in for those overdue service reminders, and maybe even need a conversation, because if we've labeled things the way that vet clinics typically label them as like a DAPP2, like that kind of thing, and people don't know what it is, so they don't have that perception of value, right? If they don't really have a deep understanding of what they're protecting their pet from, they may not think that it's worth making that appointment. So having that report, I think, will be key in not only client communication, but in getting the pet in for those services.
Yeah, I totally agree. And honestly, I come more from a business side on clinic management, and you can derive that reoccurring revenue because you can now customize incredible new rules. Like I have a couple of clinics who even have reminders on dentistries, right? Or they might do ultrasounds, like for heart ultrasounds, so cardiac ultrasounds, and they might have different services, right? Like cardiac ultrasound 2 for a more advanced murmur. So I want to see them quarterly. And that will then trigger, because that particular service on that record will then trigger a quarterly. While when we charge them then a cardiology 1 ultrasound, that will trigger a yearly one, because we just want to monitor the good process. You just really think out of the box, because all of those reminders in my business mindset will create reoccurring revenue for the clinic. And that obviously, because we can customize them and we're only sending reminders out who actually had that service already utilized, that means that we are customizing them. Like somebody who never had a heart murmur before won't get a cardio, like an ultrasound reminder, because we had to have that service pretty much on the record, on the invoice, to trigger that reoccurring reminder. And I think I want to just showcase here that we can make more revenue for your clinics with more advanced reminder setups, and just think a little bit outside of the box, right? Like, what do you think your customers would prefer to have reminders on?
Mm-hmm.
And if that might be blood work, if that might be ultrasound, if that might be dental cleanings, those bring so much money back into the clinic. Even if just 10% of the reminders show up, that is 10% more than you had before when you didn't reminded them that they should come in. And so, like, I'm a big advocate of really pushing for new ways of getting the customer back into the clinic.
I think honestly, the options are endless, especially with the way that this is set up now. I know at previous clinics that I've worked at, having, a dental recheck scheduled in, a tech appointment, sub-Q fluids, all of these things that may need a little bit of an indication, a little push to get the clients to come back in. So this way that you've shown us, I think, is really, really helpful for that, and definitely encourage people to kind of think outside the box. I think we're at time, but we did have one more question. You mentioned age as a new rule. Can you add a rule for a geriatric checkup? I think if I can answer this one, maybe if I've been educated enough, I think if you have something that is associated with that, or if you made a reminder for a geriatric checkup with, a recurrence period of, I would think 6 months, every 6 months, having a senior patient come in for an exam. I think that would be possible. Is that fair to say, Janine?
It's fair to say, so long we have a unique trigger. And what I mean by that is we would have a geriatric service. So you actually have a service what calls geriatric exam. Then you can embed that particular trigger into that geriatric exam reminder. And it's unique. But you couldn't have the same trigger in the normal, the annual exam and the geriatric, because it would trigger both reminders and would confuse your customers. So if you don't already have a service, what you call geriatric exam, I would just make a new service, what could cost the same than the, annual one. And then you have two unique triggers and can create two different rules with two different cadences, right? One is for our normal pets who always get the normal exam, what is a 12 months, and then the geriatric exam would trigger pretty much the 6 months trigger, as Heather said. So very well explained, Heather, and you understand it on a high level now too.
It's all due to you. I just want to read, Lynn also said, you guys have been doing awesome. Since we got Digitail, there have been so many improvements. We really appreciate it. And then, by the way, I think this is an awesome approach to smart reminders, really promising stuff. So just a couple positive comments as we close it out. Was there anything else that you wanted to say, Janine?
No, I'm just really excited to be part to bring to our digitailers cool new features and hopefully explain them on a high level so you guys can set them up yourself and kind of get your, run wild with them. Make as much money as possible, because the more money we make, the more we can treat fantastic pets and also our staff. So it's a big, big part for me to really put that growth into the clinic. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much for participating. I think that, as you said, doing the initial legwork right out of the gate, really optimizing things, automating everything so that it's less work when you're actually, processing, days get busy. I think this is really, really key. Thank you, Janine. And thanks to everyone for joining us, and anyone who wasn't able to join us. I hope you enjoyed the recording. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know. You can email me and I'll get you the answers you need.